till just now.
Love you. Let me get on up here and give me a little Rev D love. We love you. So glad you're back.
I'm so glad to be with you all today. I have missed your energy.
We'll give you a shout out here too. All right.
Oh, your ass is gonna get a shout out too. Don't you think you're gonna sit behind the scenes?
All right, Facebook, thanks for joining in. We've of course, like we always do, we do our audio check here, and then we'll go live. Wade, you joined in. I'm glad you got
Wade made it.
I forgot to tell you last time.
I told him to tell you, but he was like, I'll tell him here in a minute, and
I didn't. My bad. My bad, Wade. All right, so let me get the audio check in here real quick.
Man, Wade always checks in, man. It's so funny.
He's great. We're lucky, man.
I don't even smoke, man. I'm gonna go ahead and get me a vape.
Go get me a vape just because of Wade.
You know what, Wade? I'm gonna get that vape. I'll be the first person in the history of vapes to cough after I do this vapor, man. Oh Lord.
All right, let me.
Oh, weak ass lungs can't even deal with vape.
Test one. All right, let me.
Pop. Oh, weak ass lungs can't even deal with vape.
Listen to that.
So that's the Facebook come back through.
Yeah, it's fine.
Good? Test one. All right, let me.
Pop. Wade, how's that sound?
Mic check is good. So Wade, he told us. Yeah, thank you. Wade's really good about being our off-site audio guy. Tell us what we need to do. Thank you, Wade. You haven't been here the last couple. Yeah,
he knows what his role is.
Yeah, he knows what his role is. It's funny. All right, so
he's over there like, what I heard was I got 2 more sales on some vapes. So you rather just go on. If you talk about this integrity, come on and get it.
Hey, for real, Wade, drop your business down in the comments. We'll promote you. So Facebook, we're going to drop the music so we can do our sharing. YouTube, same thing. We'll be right back. This is Scott.
This is Colin. And we are 2 Rational Bastards.
All right, that was the audio. I'm going to drop the podcast. That was the music, otherwise, in other words. I'm going to drop the podcast version now. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to another episode of 2 Rational Bastards, broadcasting live every single week on Facebook. Video is then uploaded to YouTube. Podcast drops the same day. I'm your host, Scott.
It's Colin.
Colin, man, a lot going on. I know you got something you want to share before we kind of get into our topic of the day. So the floor is yours, my man.
Yes. Amaya, I remember 17 years ago, it's been about 2.5 weeks ago, you were born. And the first thing I thought when you came out of your mother was, damn it, I only have one model. She looked just like my son did. I'm just like, what the hell, man? I'm sick of this shit. The same damn big ass forehead, little big old nose, same lips, eyes, ears. I was like, oh, damn. But they look totally different now. But as she was growing up, she would come up to me, and it was right around the time that she first started talking, really well, and she could puzzle her words together. I'd be like, Amaya, when's your birthday? She'd go, the 16th of November. I was like, what the hell did you just say? The 16th of who? 16th of November. So, but I just want to tell you, baby girl, that we didn't get a chance to do that show on that day. Yeah. And then there was a couple of other episodes that happened. And I just want to take this moment to just remind you of how important you are to me, how much you've changed me, how much you've taught me through the years. You'll hear things like, there's no such thing as just a teacher or just a student. There's been so many times she come and tell me, you don't even know what onomatopoeia is, do you? I'm like, nah, what was it again, baby girl?
What'd you just call me?
Somebody's peeing in the back. But, she would always come up and, this is what this means, and what really, what is an eclipse really? And, I would sit there and listen to you intently, and my son's like that too. But she's just a little bit different. My son is more of a nerdy savant type of. He's like, okay, now you give me any equation, I'm gonna tell you in 1.2 seconds, and she just like, it's gonna take me 2 or 3 minutes. I'm gonna make the same score on the test as you. It's gonna be 100, but it's gonna take me just a little while to finish. But the fact that she is willing to just come up and just share anything and just teach me and remind me that, I'm not as smart as I thought I was without listening sometimes. And you remind me of that. But I love you very much. Happy belated birthday. I love you so much, baby girl.
That's awesome, man. We can just end the show now. How do you top that?
Shut up.
Shit. That's good. So we're going to spend very little time on any external stuff like we usually do. Everybody knows we're segmented. We have a very, very special guest. I can't wait to get to. You guys will recognize her, the audience that we had from Exposing Real Estate Damn Near Anything Else. She was there. And any case,
she was our very first guest. Very first returning guest from that show.
Very first returning guest that we've ever invited back. So,
I must have done something right.
you did. You change a lot of lives on a daily, weekly basis. So anyway, that was a very popular and meaningful episode, and so we're glad to have you back. But Colin, so finally finished the last episode of season 2 of Stranger Things last night.
Okay. So you've seen them all,
dude. So let me just say this: the episode before that, where she went to meet her sister.
Yeah.
I hated that episode. It was so boring.
I know.
In fact, Kona was like, this is out of place.
This is unnecessary.
Well, he said they could have spent 10 minutes on that, but a whole episode.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And so when the last episode came on, I was like, this is,
I'll tell you why I liked it. It took your attention off. And I really didn't like it. But it gave that intro where she came back in. It gave it merit. It's just like, oh, it's good again. Oh, hell yeah. And I'm telling you, it was so pointless.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, all they had to do was just give that little intro that they showed and not show that anymore. But they wanted you to see what road you could have gone down when you have that much power. And I mean, she had already given a great sacrifice, given herself, and then she ended up still being alive. Mm-hmm. So it gave her a great intro back in. That last episode was dope too.
God, it was so good. So welcome Wade, welcome Angie, welcome Tiara, my cousin, welcome Rachel. Thanks for joining in. There's several other people too. I can't see their names right now. But so here's what Netflix did, because Stranger Things is Netflix. Have you watched that show at all?
I
Rev?
have.
Oh my God, it's phenomenal. So anyway, so it says, to the surprise of no one, Netflix fan fave TV series Stranger Things is officially coming back for another season.
Yes.
The company made the announcement Friday on Twitter. So here's what Netflix said to the fans. Should we make another season of Stranger Things?
Hell yeah.
All this onslaught of comments. So they go, for the love of Steve, duh, because Steve.
Right.
So hold tight, baby darts. Season 3 is officially happening.
No,
so,
good.
So people that watch Stranger Things will understand those references of Steve and baby darts.
Mm-hmm.
So in any case, the news comes just months after the genre blending drama picked up 5 awards out of 18 nominations at the 2017 Emmy Awards.
Wow.
They had 18 nominations.
Wow.
That's amazing.
And here's the thing. I will tell you this. Millie Bobby Brown, the girl that plays 11, she's British.
Yeah.
And I wish they would stop coming over here and taking all of our acting jobs.
They're
Dead.
good.
Damn it, Walking Dead.
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln, the guy that plays Rick Grimes, he's British. So you
Yeah.
hear him interview like, I'm so
the way
disappointed.
he says Carl sounds like he's
Carl.
like, Carl. I'm like, shut up, man. He's going to be okay. It's his dream.
They're taking all of our damn good actors away.
Carl.
The 2 last great actors we had, Kevin Spacey's a molester, and
I'm like, oh, wow, Kevin Spacey, and here he goes.
And Denzel. Now, if anything comes out on Denzel,
If something comes out on
I'm
Denzel
done.
or Wesley Snipes, I'm done. I'm done with TV.
How you gonna love Wesley Snipes? With
Wesley
Denzel?
Snipes is way better than he gets credit for.
Look,
Shut up.
You all don't look alike. You do realize this, right?
Well, everybody else thinks I do, so I'm going to go on and run with it for once.
So Gary, welcome in. So I'm going to start with we've got an in studio. I want to say engineer today.
We do have
Billy
an.
Sloan. Thanks for coming in, my man.
Say his name again. I was walking on you.
Billy Sloan is in today. He's off camera, kind of observing, and is one of our fans. So we appreciate.
Yeah, he's probably over there like, what in the hell have I done? When would be a good time for me to walk up out of here?
Where are you going? You notice he's leaving now. I'm sure there's like,
yeah, and now I'm gone.
yeah. I'm out. So always. Of course, Colin checked me on this last week. You didn't have to do this, calling me out, threw me on the bus. I always say I start with the quote of the week.
Mm-hmm.
He goes, you notice how he never actually starts.
Yeah, we go on, start it then.
So, remember I told you I flipped, and this one popped up today. Failure is an editorial judgment imposed by others.
I love it.
Wow.
That's powerful, right?
I love
we
it.
talked about last week failure, the necessity of failure and whatnot. So
It's weird because there's and I'm not going to quote the quote because I would butcher it. But the gist of it was, if you're looking for other people's approval exclusively, you failed at being an individual.
absolutely.
And for some reason that's jumping out at me like that. And we talk about all the time how synchronicities happen. If you have your eyes, they're always present. But I think that we allow ourselves to have that fog, and we don't see all the things that are happening. That's kind of letting us know, hey, you're in the right track. Look at this, look at that. This is similar. So I've been trying to be more conscious of it. Yeah. And dude, it of course, when we're together, it always happens. But what I've noticed is it always happens. Like I'm driving and I try to stay present with other moments. And I realized about me is, not to take away from our relationship, but I put our relationship on such a pedestal. Yeah. Because I'm more present when I'm with you, and when I'm more present in other moments, those synchronicities happen more often, or I'm aware of them more often. And it's like, wow. So the growth of this show, the growth of me as an individual, I can't speak for you, but I mean, I'm witnessing more growth from you, because you used to cuss out everybody that pulled out in front of you, and now you're like, you know what? The motherfucker pulled out in front of me, and I didn't say nothing to him. I still do, but it's an internal conversation now. So, welcome, Gary Buckles, one of our, and Mr. Noel. This is Mr. Noel is, and I have to give him to that because I have so much respect for this guy. Comes to the gym every day. This guy that comes in with his wheelchair,
and is an inspiration to me every single day.
He's an inspiration to me too, from what you told me.
I showed, Mr. Noel, I showed Colin a picture of you in your competition days, and he was blown away. So we're going to have him on the show.
Whoa. I want you to say why he's a great person, but what did he say to the people that tried to give him a sponsorship, talking about integrity?
Yeah. This is the kind of man he is. So he was a career military guy and super astonishing individual. And he literally comes to the gym every day in a wheelchair. He gets up and he works out. So everybody that has excuses on anything that they've got to do, I look to him. So I told him, I didn't need any more inspiration. You showed me a picture of what I didn't need any more. But he was being sponsored by, and he's going to be on the show, and I can let him tell his story. So I'm going to kind of paraphrase it just briefly. But he was going to be sponsored by bodybuilding.com. Anybody in the workout world knows who bodybuilding.com
right.
is. But they wanted to classify him as
they're the Hollywood of bodybuilding.
Yeah. They wanted to classify him as like handicap or wheelchair competition, because that's not me. I'm not identified by that label. He's a phenomenal human being. So
and didn't get the sponsorship.
So I'm glad that he joined in. So
love you, man.
We're gonna have you on soon, man. We can't wait to have you on. So anyway, without further ado, I purposely didn't have any other anything else to share, because I wanted her to take the time that she needs. So this is again one of our returning guests from Exposing Real Estate. That show's title is Deceiving. We didn't really talk much about real estate. We did a little bit. It's much like how we are now. She was one of our guests there. Phenomenal. It was a 2.5-hour episode. It will go by like that when you listen to it. Just trust me, just to listen to her. Not to us. You could tune us out. But we've got her back. Our first returning. We're so happy. Rev D, I'm going to give this one to you. Yeah, you hear the crowd. I want you to introduce yourself and what you do just kind of loosely, and we'll get into some of the things that you've been doing since then and what has evolved for you. So the floor is yours.
Well, I call myself Rev D. It's what's on the front of my car that I drive around in Nashville.
Her Lexus convertible, red and
bright
color.
Red color, yes. And I do many things, but what I call myself is a spiritual midwife and a mindfulness coach.
I love it.
And I love the spiritual midwife part.
Yeah. And when I say that to people, a lot of times they go, do you birth babies? And I say, well, sort of, kind of, but not the way you think.
Yeah.
I help people birth new ideas. I help people evolve their consciousness to the next level. And that to me is what I do all day long, whether I'm working with individuals, whether I'm being the minister of a church, whether I'm working with the Donaldson Hermitage Chamber of Commerce, or I'm working in a leadership capacity somewhere else. I have been working with a minister in town by the name of Enoch Fuzz, and we have started an organization called One Nashville. And it is to bring the awareness of what is really going on behind the scenes in Nashville to the forefront, because a lot of times people don't really have a clue about the homeless population we have in Nashville and a lot of the other things that are really going on at a deep level. So, you know, I love to help people think. I grew up in a very fundamental religion that told you to not think and not question what you were taught.
Right.
And I do just the opposite. I tell people, even if I say it, please think about it. Please question it, because that's the only way we evolve our consciousness.
That's right. So haven't we hit this before about, and that's when I started kind of questioning my belief system when I was young, because you're very compartmentalized in the way you're supposed to think, being a Southern Baptist, whatever it is.
Yes.
And I remember questioning it, and you know, the preacher's up there kind of giving his spiel, and everybody's shaking their head. And I'm like, I'm not, because I'm trying to investigate this on my own and trying to figure out what it means to me instead of having somebody else dictate it to me. And when I questioned that, you would have thought that I was a leper.
Oh, yes.
Something's wrong with you. We need to, you know, have some type of exorcism or something like that. But isn't that the whole point? Is what Jesus was trying to do was to elevate your consciousness and your awareness and to challenge your thought, right?
Well, for me, that's why I wish I would have been an older person when I had my kids, because I was more of that type of person where, you know, kids are to be seen, not heard type of thing. And now I understand more than ever that, like the statement I made to Amaya, there is no teacher exclusively and there is no student exclusively. It's a collaboration. And a lot of times when you're communicating with someone, what you're doing, even if they disagree, is it's challenging your own belief, and you get to reframe it for yourself to try to convey. And a lot of times you might change your view based on what the person's saying, or they get to change, or you have a collaboration and come up with something totally new. But most people, their goal isn't to get the right information, is to be right, period. And that's the biggest issue. So that's what I loved about Unity as well about you. You can go up and be like, hey, I love this part, but you were being too, I'm going to say this real quick.
Go right ahead.
I went up to Rev D one time. I was just like, Rev D, you don't ever say like this part, but she's like, Colin, if you don't shut the hell up, I'm trying to convey this in a way that most people can understand, not just for your little black ass. I was like, oh, okay. And I was like, okay, I marched up like a little kid and got some cake or something. That's what I love about you. You're trying to speak to everybody in a way that we can all get it.
Well, it's about evolution of consciousness. And I have a private company, a coaching business called the High Vibration Zone. And I feel energy in a room. And I can tell as I start speaking sometimes how people are responding to what I'm saying. And so then as I'm standing on the stage, I'm monitoring the words that I use very mindfully, because I can tell by somebody's face or their body language whether they've cut me off totally or whether they're beginning to understand. And sometimes I have to process while I'm talking about how to say it in a different way, if that makes sense.
Oh, and it makes absolute sense. I mean, and you probably don't get the sense of being cut off that often because you're so dynamic on stage. I mean, think about when we go and the messages that she delivers, they're just always so profound. I don't see how you come up with so much great content every single week.
Well, she's hilarious. I feel like I'm watching a comedian. Like she'll be up on stage and you'll hear all of a sudden like a cat, and you'll think a cat was outside. She'd be like, wow, like all the little sound effects she makes. She might do the worm or do a windmill or anything. It's like, is she breakdancing or doing a service?
She gets into character, and it's I don't know.
It's entertaining. It's inspirational. It's educational. It's all the things. But because of you're so dynamic and you're talking about very explicit things, your message gets missed sometimes. And how does it make you feel that you put all that energy into conveying a message and it be misconstrued by most? How's that? I mean, does that make you feel a certain way?
I just keep showing up and doing what I'm doing. And I believe, I have a belief that like even who's listening to this right now, they're getting what they can get. Does that make sense? Everybody comes to the table where they are in consciousness, and that means their mind, their body, and their spirit, and they can only take in what they can take in. And I can't determine that.
I can't remember what there was. I read it here recently. There's a successful band or something that were talking kind of about this. And they were asking him the success. He said, I just kept showing up. I kept doing me, and it finally spoke to the right people, and success found me.
I spoke about Donaldson Hermitage area, and I live in Old Hickory, so I live in that area of town. And I know probably about 12 years ago, I got very aggravated at some of the people in that area because they would not wake up. You know what I mean by wake up? They were still living in the 40s and the 50s in their belief systems, their consciousness. And I had one man in the area in a meeting that came over and put his arm around me, and he said, Denise, these people are not really ready to hear the truth and to change, but you just keep showing up and just keep doing what you're doing, and you're making a difference. And I have never forgotten that, because that's what we have to do. We just have to keep speaking the truth.
I'm ashamed to say that I take it personal. Like when we first started, I don't know. I just felt like, and I don't want to step up on a soapbox and act like what we think is so profound. I just thought that there would be more people that are out there that thought like us. And I don't care who you are. You can be a grand wizard of the Klan or Malcolm X or, whatever. It seems like anybody that's saying anything has an audience. And selfishly, when we started, it wasn't to enlighten the people that are out there asleep. And even that statement is you know, kind of dismissive. I mean, where you are is where you are, and that's fine. But I just thought there would be more like-minded people, and we can build a community so there'd be somewhere you could go other than Unity and just collab. And to find out that it seems like, to me, it's the hardest audience to find.
You
know what I mean? Like,
I agree.
it's like, it's almost, sometimes it feels like you're talking to yourself, and then you go out and then there'll be somebody that knows you from the podcast. I was like, where the fuck were you when you was supposed to be making a comment? You know, my ego needs you.
Yeah. I'm not sure that it's necessarily,
Now it's like I've grown in my egotistical, you know, origin.
right.
And now it's like, you know what? I'm just going to collaborate with my brother, and it is what it is. But I'm just saying, from the beginning.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
You know what I mean?
I think now it's not so much that there aren't more out there of us. I mean, we have a pretty loyal audience that listens, and some of them are either completely conservative or completely liberal, a blend, or whatever your belief system is religiously or whatever. They're a blend. We hit a lot of points, but I think we just don't get a lot of necessarily feedback that way unless it's completely opposite. People just tend to do that. They focus in on the negative. Then I run into people like Billy. I run into people like Jeremy or somebody at the gym that listens. Hey, the things you guys have been saying lately, it really speaks to me. Well, damn, say it there so people can see that what it means, and it engages, you know. So I think there's more out there than we're giving ourselves credit that are actually listening.
There is clearly,
yeah.
But you know, I'm just saying, my delusion, my preconceived notion was, once we create this format, I mean, Joe Rogan can find an audience of UFC people, and then this person over here that's super irrational with the racist viewpoint can find an audience, and this and that and the other that they can actually interact with.
Yeah.
And then here we come speaking about something that is new thought, which is really the
original thought,
the original thought, you know. And it's just, it took me a while to get to the point that I can just take my ego out of it and be like, dude, make the music for you.
Yeah.
And then whoever else wants to listen will listen, and then your audience will grow from there.
Yeah.
Once I got to that point, now I can come in and just be me and just, you know, ramble on like I'm doing now.
Yeah.
And you know what I mean?
So
and express myself in a way that doesn't need validation from others.
So welcome in Josh Perry. Welcome Freddie Gilbert. He says Colin is green on the set. What's going on? I'm not sure if he's talking about the lighting. I don't know. You don't look green to me. I don't know. Or you seem brand new. I don't know what he's trying to say.
I am the Hulk.
Didn't know you worked out on the set. He says again, you still have those tiny legs. Laugh out loud is what he said.
My legs are fine. I got small calves.
Welcome in, Joe. Welcome Terrence Pennington. That was our guest from last week.
What's up, Terrence?
So he's got a comment here. Yes, people are attracted to negativity and drama. It's sad, but that's why television is sold out to reality TV shows. You guys keep pushing because people are searching for you, and I'm glad I found you guys.
Oh, man.
Well, and you know, I want to add something, because I've said this many times on Sunday morning to the people that come to my congregation. People that are around 50 years old and older thought that they were going to be able to retire and sit on their front porch and rock and crochet and knit or whatever, and that the world was just going to lollygag them through.
Right.
And all of a sudden, what I will tell you is that people from that age bracket up are beginning to wake up and go, we can't be passive any longer.
I like it.
We have got to stand up and speak the truth, whether people like it or not. But what I see happening out there right now is that families are having problems at Thanksgiving dinner. Friends are having problems with friends because we're all coming to the table and we all have different ideas about what it should be. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, it does.
Which is a good thing. I think it's a great thing. We need to come to the table together. But those people, again, because I'm in that age bracket from 50 up, those people are scared to come to the table because they don't want to lose their friends. They don't want to lose their families, and they have not learned how to speak their truth in a way that people can hear it.
Don't you find that even much more so here? And you may have just said this when I was responding, I'm not sure, but the area that we live in.
Oh, it's worse here. God. We're in the buckle of the Bible Belt.
Just say that.
We are in the buckle of the Bible
offline.
So with that, collaboration you're doing with that other minister.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about are you seeing any measurable success from that at all? Tell me about that.
I am. And one of the things that's beginning to happen is even in the new thought people can begin to think that they're the only people that have a corner on the truth, right?
Very true.
So that happens too. And it's like I've been getting different religious belief systems together and letting us talk, and we're beginning to understand that we're saying the same thing, we're using different verbiage.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
And so it's a process. But the thing I've been telling the people that have been leading this group called One Nashville is that it's turning an ocean liner around in the ocean. And you cannot do it quickly.
It takes
long periods of time, but we are no longer just rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. Okay, we're no longer doing that. We're turning this around, but it may take 10 years.
So we kind of hit this in an episode about the change of thought. Like you're saying, a lot of times if you found out somebody that's completely what you feel like is completely opposite of you is really only a very small, minute percentage of what they are.
Yes.
And if you find 99% of who they are and what they really represent is more in line with you, it's that one thing that you're focusing on.
Yes.
And if you can sit down and talk about that one thing a little bit to say, here's where we differ, but there's some commonality here. Look at all this other stuff we agree on. We've got something to work from.
Right.
Yes.
And that's what you're doing. And I think in years past, the fact that it always was funny to me, and I would bring this question up when I was, traditional Southern Baptist growing up as a kid. I'd go down and I asked the pastor, I said, why is it when I drive down the street, does it say Baptist Church, Catholic Church, Church of Christ? Why didn't it just say church? He said, we all, I said, y'all reading from the same Bible. Were there different interpretations? I said, well, haven't you thought that maybe you guys can come together and have a conversation on your differences? This is me being 13 years old saying this to a grown-ass man. And he says it's just not the way it works.
They were stuck on where I was when we started the podcast, looking for a certain audience instead of just speaking to everybody and letting them pick it up as they need to.
What we're doing in this organization called One Nashville, and there's a Facebook page that you can join.
Is it one with one?
One, and it's all run together.
Okay.
ONENASHVILLE, all together as one word.
Okay.
And we have community meetings on the first and third Saturdays of each month.
Awesome.
And we meet at different places. This last Saturday, we met at Harpeth Hills Church of Christ. I was totally blown away. I grew up Church of Christ. They had guitars and drums and all that up on the stage, which they don't do normally in the Church of Christ. And what One Nashville is doing is exactly what you were talking about, Scott. We are not talking about religion. We're talking about what we can do to make Nashville a better place to live in. Does that make sense?
Sure.
And then each congregation can decide how they need to come to the table, but we don't make religion the separation piece.
Right.
It's the thing that joins you. And then they can take that message back that you guys have worked on and speak the language that their congregation needs to hear so that they accept it. Right. So,
do we believe people need health care? Do we believe we need to deal with the homeless situation? Do we understand that a lot of people that are arrested on the street are mentally ill? What can we help? What can we do to help about that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely it does.
I have a question, because this might be something that I can use based on your answer. We know in this community that transparency is one of those things that's necessary, but it's also something that makes you extremely uncomfortable, because if you're being transparent, you're telling the truth, just like a young kid would. If you want to wear that dress, don't ask somebody under the age of 3, because they'll tell you that the dress looks like shit. So if you're not prepared to be uncomfortable and then still keep your emotions out of it and then still work on whatever the evidence is,
right?
Do you in turn kind of go in soft and try to communicate other things and then add that piece in later? Or do you hit transparency and then deal with, I'm offended, you've made me uncomfortable, and now I'm going to try to defend myself. You know, the Freudian, you know, flip. You know, what do you say? Because I have a problem with that. Like, I'll be totally transparent, and I'm prepared to be uncomfortable by what you say, but it's finding people that can do that without getting angry. You saw Scott and I get into a passionate debate earlier. There was no emotion. Like, I was excited to hear what he was going to say that was to the contrary to what I was saying, because it gives me another vantage point, and it gives me something more to go on. Even if I win the debate or lose the debate, I'm going to come away with something. But how do you get past those emotions?
Well, number one, I want to say that the word passion, that's important, because a lot of times when people think that they're arguing, they're really dealing with passionate issues.
Right.
And they may be coming from a different direction, but they're not really mad. They're passionate. And we misinterpret passion for anger sometimes, because we've not even taught our children how to be passionate, because that word is kind of funky, and, you know, we don't talk about passion with children. But it's like, how do I had a whole year one time in Unity that I devoted to passion and talking about being passionate and purposeful in what we're doing. But people misinterpret passion. I used to have a woman on our board at church, and every time she would start talking, I could feel people just shrinking and, you know, sucking the cushions up out of the chair, as I say on Sunday morning. I just said something to make people suck the cushions up out of the chairs. But, you know, and I finally said, okay, time out. Let's just stop. Right. This individual is very passionate about what she's saying. You don't have to defend yourself.
Right.
Just listen to what they have to say, which is the second point I want to make. Unity teaches that peace begins with me. And so whatever is going on, I don't have to defend myself. When I feel like I have to defend myself, I've already lost the battle. All I have to do is go back inside and find the peace. Now, I have to speak my truth in a way that it's heard. Right. But it's all about me. You know, I'm not in this world to try to change that other person. Right. I can't. All I can do is keep working on me. So then when I get home, I go, you know, why did I get all sphinctered up and mad at that person? You know, because this is about me. I need to deal with me. Obviously, there was something said or done, or sometimes, I can be honest with you, it's just their face. The way they looked, it was just pissing me off, and I just wanted them to shut up. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
And I have to deal with me.
I can't listen to someone I don't like tell the truth.
Right.
Sometimes.
Right.
So let me ask you this. Does it start with educating your audience with how you speak? Or do you listen and pay attention to the words that are going to make a person passionate and then speak in that language? I mean, do you become an interpreter, or do you, you know, just pound the language until you learn it?
I can tell you that, you know, people come and go in my congregation for many different reasons, because as a minister, you are the mother or the father figure. And if they have their own issues with mother and father, then they're going to play them out with you. And that's exciting in itself. But, you know, I have undergraduate degrees in music and drama, and I play with that every Sunday morning. Because the things that I am attempting to get out there, the truths that I'm attempting to speak, sometimes are heavy. Right. And sometimes I know the two of you can handle what I say. I know you can, but everybody cannot. And so if I can put humor in there, if I can act it out, if I can tell a story, Jesus used all kinds of metaphors.
Absolutely.
And parables. Whatever I can do to get it out to people, if I can hiss like a cat, if I can, you know, whatever I can do.
And she does.
To make people giggle. Because if they can get to that place,
breaks their barriers
it
down.
Breaks their barriers
down. It's like, there's a show on that people know, Blackish.
Yes.
They're so
I thought
smart.
I would hate it because I do not like the main actor.
Yeah, Anthony Anderson.
I don't like him, but I love that show.
But it's the same format I'm talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. It's brilliant. They tackle major issues with a comedic backdrop. I mean, the
and you actually hear it.
the messages and it's one of the highest rated shows on TV, which surprises me. One, it's an all black cast, and then they're talking about major issues, and still people tune in. They don't really. It's
and
like
their white audience in that show, or the white audience, the white actors in that show, they're white. They're not acting black.
No,
or, you know, they're still they're still confused at some of the things that black people do. It's so funny.
Which is very. Very smart. When we talked about that about The Walking Dead, how it's a show about psychology. It's not about zombies and all that.
You forget about the zombies.
You
honestly.
forget about that. So that's what you're doing. You're doing Blackish every single Sunday.
I am.
I mean,
well,
you're giving away my secret.
Well, as a woman, you have several barriers that you're dealing with women being this image of less for so long. You women didn't even have the right to vote up until 1920. A lot of people don't realize that women were pretty much the afterthought, and you had certain roles and that was it. And then there was a rule of thumb up until like 1985, I want to say. And rule of thumb, Scott taught me that, you know, I used to say it all the time. I didn't know that it was so derogatory. But rule of thumb was, if you're going to beat your wife,
oh my, we're going that direction. Okay.
Make sure that
we just lost every viewer.
You know what? Fuck him. Everybody that you know, if you're gonna beat your wife, make sure that the rod isn't bigger than your thumb. And that was a law. And then up until 5 or 6 years ago, you could beat a woman up until an inch of her life, and if she said, "Oh, it's okay," they wouldn't even put the guy in jail. So I say all that to say this. In the church, it's still to this day, this is a practice. Women aren't supposed to, I put in quotations, be heard.
Right.
And you had a compelling, oh my God, I don't want to corner you into saying a certain thing.
You're fine. But
it was something I didn't know. Women weren't supposed to be heard because paganism was such a sexual thing. I mean, it was everything was sexual back then. I mean, but it was, what was it? Easter. The only reason we have eggs is because, rabbits and eggs and all that. That's not just some little toy thing that they made up. Right. It was a pagan ritual for fertility.
You're giving out some more secrets.
Sorry. But when you're dealing with all that sexual thing, and then you come in with Constantine that consolidated Christianity and paganism, and then you kind of blend everything in and change Sabbath from Saturday to Sunday and all these things and blah, 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 blah. You consolidate it. You're dealing with a lot of sexual things. So when you hear a woman speak and all you think about is sex when a woman's speaking, it wasn't about the woman didn't have anything of value to be that's being said. It's just we were such a patriarch energy that we needed them not to say anything, because who wants to think about a hard penis while they're sitting here talking about God?
Yeah. And you know what I'm going to add to that? I have, because I do coaching and counseling all week, and I'm a psychologist also on the side, I make sure that I see somebody that just keeps me on my toes, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right.
And she and I were talking the other day, and this may throw you for a loop, but those of us that are women that, grew up and were working in the 80s,
right,
even the 70s.
Right.
It was a normal daily occurrence that somebody did something inappropriate to us. And
daily.
This is the part that you may not even begin to have to understand. We played into it.
Right.
Because those of us that were smart enough, and I was, knew how to use our sexuality to rise up the corporate ladder. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does.
And so we were part of the problem instead of part of the
honesty and transparency of this, right?
I love it.
Does that make sense?
Absolutely does.
And so now I'm having
that women aren't willing to admit
no, they don't want to. They want to be victims. I have never wanted to be a victim, even though I will say a little bit about that in a moment. But at this point in time, I want women to say, I was a part of that. I played
Right.
into that to get what I wanted. I did whatever I could do to get that role in that play. I did whatever I could do. Hell, I got a job one time as a automated systems coordinator for what was SunTrust Bank at the time, Third National Bank, working with automated teller machines and computers. Do I look like that?
Yes, you do.
And the man said the reason I got the job is he thought I had pretty legs.
Oh, wow.
Woohoo!
Well, we talked about this last week. White advantage, you know, the advantages of, hey, I've given more chess pieces than you, and I'm not going to not use those.
Right.
And
We're not
so
going to turn
we
around.
used
We're not
what
going
we
to turn around and
had.
give all our land back to the
Yeah.
Indians. You know what I mean? Like oh yes, it was very bad. The Trail of Tears. Here's your land back. No, we're going to go ahead and take that benefit and run with it.
So
It's the politics.
So
of
what
it.
I think is happening right now is that there's lots of women who are coming out and going, we're tired of this and we're not going to take this anymore. And nobody really knows what to do with all that. Does that make sense? Because we've been quiet for so many years.
Well, you've
and
had
we
to
have
be.
used it. Well,
Right.
but we used it. You know, we used it to get what we wanted because we realized we had something everybody wanted. Woo-hoo.
so
But can we blame you though?
yeah, no,
Well, you know, I don't know. I blame myself. I will be honest with you. I blame myself because I know that I did that. And I
Right.
know that I intentionally did it
Okay.
to get
So
what I
she's
wanted.
owning the facts.
I get it. I get it. But
Did it make it okay for that man to do what he did to me, or for my first husband to abuse me, or for the Church of Christ? I worked for a Christian school in town. I won't even say the name because I don't want to blast them. But, you know, because I left a man who had been abusing me almost every day for 5 years.
right.
I mean, I had bruises. I was strangled. He tried to drown me. It was awful
Right.
stuff. But because I left him, I got kicked out of a job
Right.
because it was a Church of Christ school. And I'm like, you know, there's something the matter with all of this picture.
Yeah.
It's like, it's not okay. You know, I was told, well, all women deserve a good spanking now and again.
All right. So here's my
All righty.
Yeah, I mean,
So here's my question. Okay. I'm not saying that you shouldn't feel however you feel. I'm just saying, is it fair to regret how you chose to go down that road based on what you just said? Because most women, they're dealing with, I was on a date and I was raped by, you know, Billy Bob the jock, and nobody's going to believe me anyway. I'm not saying that it's right. I'm just saying I can understand why someone would sit back and be quiet for a while and not say anything until there was at least a movement, because there's so many people that have been burned at the stake. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's
Right.
politics in everything that you do. And if you don't play your role correctly, it could ruin your life overall. And it's because of you're being surrounded by ignorance, not because you're ignorant yourself. And, you know, being a black man in the South, and, you know, I'm not trying to use a race card,
Yeah.
but everybody
That's what
knows
it
it's
is.
a little bit worse in the South. There's going to be times that you're going to choose to put on a certain role to get out of a certain circumstance
Yeah.
that's uncomfortable extremely, whether it be, okay, I'm in Pulaski right now, let me be a good old boy, or I'm in Lebanon where everybody.
I'm going to ask you what you're doing in Pulaski, but
Yeah.
anyway.
What the hell are you doing up here, boy? I played football. We played them in football. I mean, you know, like, I had to be up there, like, you know, and I better, yeah, you're pretty fast, boy, and then they're grinding on your ankle when you get under the pile, you know. So I'm just saying, with this Me Too movement, God bless them. I don't fault them for waiting for a more
Right.
pleasant,
Right.
you know, platform or playing field
Playing
to
field.
come out, because now the consequence is the tyrant's role, is his tyrant's turn. You know, we've spent a whole, golly, how many years, like thousands of years, saying that the victim is the victim, and let's put the tyrant on a pedestal. It doesn't matter that you're the president and you grabbed a pussy. It doesn't matter that you are a reverend and you did whatever. It doesn't matter that you're a football jock. You did what you did, and the consequence is X. I love Louis C.K. I love his comedy. He's awesome. But you did a very horrible thing, and you need to be punished. And whatever that is, that's your consequence. You did what you did, and the energy off of the offset of that is what it is.
So how, you know, we talk about you play the role for survival, right? But there's got to be a time where we talked about this on the past episode when we talked about subconscious bias. And
right.
So, and we talked about how then there are classes that will just accept the label or play the part of the label because everybody around them saying like, oh, Mexicans are only good at digging ditches, whatever. They just, okay, yeah, that's all I can do. I can't be an IT guy, even if they disagree. So obviously part of this is you have to slowly, because you can't abruptly do it, you have to slowly redefine your role.
You do.
So how do you do that? Okay, you're you know, Southern, you know, Church of Christ, you had this horrible thing, and you're slowly redefining the role. How do you do that? If there is a role that is being assigned to you or a label that's been assigned to you and you're playing along just to keep yourself safe, how do you do that safely? You know what I mean?
Well, it's very interesting because I'm in the process of writing 3 different books with 3 different people right now.
Wow.
But one of them, it talks about this specifically of first you have to really give yourself permission.
Wow. Yeah.
Yes.
And a lot of women and men will not give themselves permission to look deep enough inside themselves. And Colin, I totally agree with what you were saying. And I want to give you another little slant. As long as I keep seeing myself as a victim, as long as I say, well, it was all his fault,
right,
then I am staying in that vibrational energy. I have to admit I played a part.
Right. Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am, it does. It does.
Even if I just laid there and let it happen, I have to remember that I played a part, that I was in that situation, and I have to learn from it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
And when I give myself permission to look at that, then the next thing that I had to do is grieve. I had to grieve that it took me that many years to wake up.
Wow.
That it took me going through 2 husbands and all kinds of jobs and all kinds of mess to finally go, I don't have to live this way.
So Wade says, digging Rev D. This is what he said.
She's amazing.
She is amazing. And he said, speak up at the time of the issue and accept the consequences. And then he says again, exactly, you allowed it to happen. So there is truth in this statement, speak up at the time of the issue and accept the consequences. But I think that it depends on, again, the role that you're playing and who you are.
It does. It does. It does. So it's a part of why I do what I do, being a spiritual midwife and a mindfulness coach. I think women specifically right now in this big issue have to decide what it is they want.
Right.
Do I want to be the typical Southern wife who is always nice?
Right.
And doing what I'm supposed to do and cleaning the house and cooking for my husband. And that was the role that I was supposed to live in.
Right.
Do I want to do that? And if I get it wrong, he's going to beat me, but women deserve a good spanking now and again.
Right.
So that's okay. Is that what I want? Is that the life I want? And so I believe we have to start by teaching our children that they can dream beyond what they think is real. Does that make sense?
Right.
I'm sure you do that with your children, Scott, but it's like with my sons, I tried to say, okay, this is the way I live my life, but I want to know what is on fire inside of you and what do you really want with your life, and know that you don't have to settle for what I've got or the way I live my life.
Right.
There's all this stuff out here in the world.
Right.
Look at it all.
Well,
pay attention to it all. See
so
what you can create.
Like Lyric one day, she's extremely fast and athletic. She comes home, she goes, "Hey, I beat the boy at school, blah blah blah," and people
Good
came up
for her.
to people came up to me and said, "Oh, you're fast for a girl." I said, "No, that's where you say, no, I'm just fast." And so one of the things we do, I'll get her in the mirror and I say, repeat, "I am beautiful, I am kind,
Yes.
I am good, but I'm no better than anybody else."
Right.
Right.
And that's my point.
Yeah.
That's my point right there. That's her repetition.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? And the person that's making that suggestion is her father. That is someone who is of value to her. I was over at my brother's house, Scott's house, for Thanksgiving, and Lyric will allow me to scratch her back and scratch her head. But who did she go to first until your hand got tired? Yeah. Scott, scratch my head, scratch my back, rub my shoulders. And that is a trust.
Yes.
When I wasn't around her every day, she would hide behind your back and kind of peek out at me, still call me Uncle Colin and all that. So I say all that to say this. For Wade, your comment earlier, to speak out in the moment, it depends on what your repetition is. If I've had the repetition of being beat down with words and physically, and then to accept the fact that everybody else's repetition and belief in it is that it's okay, I'm not going to have the conditioning for the strength to speak. So I might need that climate of everybody else coming awake a little bit before I have the confidence to be me authentically and then say, hey, me too. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So for Terry Crews and, all these people that are coming out now, I commend them. But yes, the people that had the true strength, and I'm not taking anything, but is, what's his name?
Colin Kaepernick being the first.
Well, no. Colin, of course, yeah. but Corey Feldman, who was raped when he was a boy at 13. Yeah. Right. He was speaking out on this, and then you have Barbara Walters coming out and saying, "Oh my God, you're going to ruin an industry." It takes a lot of courage to go against that kind of scrutiny,
right?
And I'm just saying, God bless him, but it's hard. He's still to this day, no one's even talking about him. He was considered a quack, considered weird, blah, 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 and he was the victim. So to know that might be plausible, it might be hard for you to come out and speak, on top of the fact you are conditioned as a human being to think that it's okay because you're in a codependent relationship, and that's your repetition, not dad saying you are beautiful and strong and you're fast, just fast. You know what I'm saying? You got to get past all that conditioning and hypnotism that you're not good enough, and then grow a little bit, and then somewhere in there decide, I'm good. I'm going. I'm worried. I don't need you to make me feel significant, and now I'm going to speak. You know what I mean? That's all I'm saying.
Yes, I do. And, I think it's got to start there. I know that I've done a lot of work with metro schools in Nashville, and I know that we have lots of children that come out of homes that are not like mine or not like Scott's. And so there is another organization I want people to be aware of. It's called Awake Tennessee. And one of the things that they are doing right now is going into middle schools and working with specifically middle school girls on how to make friends the right way, how to say no to a boy that they think is the most cool boy in the world. Mm-hmm. Because if nobody teaches them that, they don't know any better.
Right.
And that's part of what I'm saying. We've got to teach our children that they have the power within them to say yes and no to situations. I mean, how many of us, and I can't speak for you all, but I know that I went with the crowd at times because I did not want to seem odd and strange. And I didn't want my boys to have to do that if they could stand up and say, that's not really what I want to do right now.
So remember this quote, Colin, this is probably going to tag into what you're going to say. Self-worth cannot be verified by others. You're worthy because you say it is so. If you depend on others for your value, it is other worth.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Right. So that's what you're saying.
Exactly what I'm saying.
Yeah.
And how do we teach that to children? Well, the number one thing that we have to do, and I did this at Pennington, I did it when I worked at the School for the Blind, we have to teach it to the adults that are working with the kids because they don't get it.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
And that's the people that you speak to half the time.
That's why I became a minister. I had been working at the School for the Blind for 15 years. in school psychology and working with counseling with kids and teachers and stuff. And I realized the issue is not the kids.
Right.
Yeah.
The issue is the adults, because the adults have no self-worth. And if I have no self-worth and I'm teaching your child,
boom,
what am I teaching them?
Exactly.
To sit down and shut up because I don't know what to do with you if you don't.
Mhm.
Does
Right.
that make sense?
Absolutely.
All I know what to do is give you a little pill that's called Ritalin or something and make you be quiet. But I don't know how to deal with your behaviors because I don't know how to deal with my own behaviors.
Right. And that's the example that they're getting over and over and over again. When I was in football, our coach, he needed you to be afraid of him. He needed you to be intimidated. And, you know, if you've listened to the show once, you know that you're less intelligent when you're afraid, you know. But what they wanted to do is break you down and get your brain out of it and have you reactive.
Right.
They wanted you to just react. And it's so weird. I just want to share this real quick. In the UFC, something that's supposed to be so primitive, they've adopted, I don't know if you've been watching lately, but they adopted a term called flow state. All right. Everybody knows flow state is the zone, you know, like when you just relax and then it's like ultra instinct. Flow state is when the fighter just relaxes and has a fighter IQ and is just reacting or acting in the moment that the punch is coming and throwing the defense and offense, not based on what they think, but just based on what's being presented to them. And on a macrocosm, that's or a microcosm, that's a macrocosm of what we do every day. Like, instead of assessing the situation for what it is and then acting accordingly, what we do is we react according to how we reacted the last time something like that happened or something similar. So nothing's authentic. You know what I mean? How's your day? Oh, it's fine. Oh, no. Well, you know, the sun's out today. Well, yesterday it was rainy, but thank God it's been hot too long. It is hot, ain't it? You know, nothing's authentic. You know what I mean? So with your kids, you have this representation of these adults that are trying to get the reaction, yelling at them and getting them into their fight or flight all the time. You're less intelligent. And then that spills over. Oh, I did bad at football today. That spills over into homework. And then you go to sleep. You don't get deep REM sleep. So you don't even replenish your hormones that you need to mature properly. Then you go back to school. It's time for a test that you're not rested for. You're nervous about that. You're not prepared. You fail the test. Am I going to get to play football? He's still going to yell. Yeah. And it's just this perpetual wheel of a spiral downward into your reptilian version of yourself that's not functional. And then you give them Ritalin because they, you know, what else do you have left? Just to have fun. Well, how do you have fun? I don't know. Let's go have sex at 11. Let's go out and the TV tells me, you know, my mom is old enough to wear these booty shorts. I'm going to start putting makeup on at 8, 9, or 10 and whatever, and go out if I can and get a fake ID. You see what I'm saying? Like, we don't know because what our representation of what it's supposed to look like was flawed in the beginning. You keep going down this perpetual wheel of not knowing and you wing it. And then everybody acts like it's the victim's fault, like we were talking about earlier. And then we're just like, we don't even get it. So what the fuck are you even saying anything in the first place? So when I go to Rev D and I'm hearing all of this and it makes perfect sense to me, it annoys me when I'm talking to people outside of it, misconstrue what was being said. I was like, that is nothing what she said. And then we start this show. We actually had the show before we started there, but we're experiencing the same thing. Like, I speak how I speak, you speak how you speak. And it could be misconstrued 2 times because you're saying it differently. Be like, y'all were arguing today. It's like, no, we said the same exact thing. So it's so frustrating. So I say all that to say this. How do you stay motivated to continue to speak to people that are bad representatives, creating bad representatives, and then them creating a group? How do you breach all of that discrepancy?
Well, you talked about the flow state. I call it the high vibration zone.
Mm-hmm.
And I have a few little rules that I use for myself. You may have heard them at church before because I say them a lot. Show up, pay attention, tell the truth, and don't get attached to the outcome.
Right.
And because we as human beings are all attached to the outcome. I want this person.
Right. Right.
They may never get me.
Right.
You know, this person has been my friend for Isn't that lovely?
Wow. What about all this? This was great. You was
and every once in a while people will go, aren't you worried about that? I said, no, that's publicity, whether it's good or bad publicity. It's like people are going, well, if that woman said that, I might go to her church and see what else she has to say.
Right.
She really said fuck from the pulpit. I may want to go hear it some Sunday morning. So,
I love it.
But does that make sense? I cannot be attached. I just can show up, and I just have to be mindful in the moment of my own mind, what I'm thinking, my own body, what's going on inside of me. You know, I appreciated you saying a while ago, you all were passionate about something, but you weren't flustered about it. If I get flustered, then I'm going, what's that about? Why am I so upset? It's because I want that person to be different. Well, I might as well give up on that one.
Right.
So show up, pay attention, tell my truth. And I say to people a lot of times when they say, what should I do about bloody? I don't know. But I'm going to tell you what my truth is. But it's only my truth.
Right.
You know, I'm going to speak my truth to you. This is what I would do if I was in that situation. But don't do it just because I said so.
Right. Right.
It needs to be what's right for you.
Right.
And then I can't be attached. I can never be attached, right? Whether somebody shows up or not, whether somebody likes me or not. You know, the mantra that I use is what you think about me is none of my business. And it's not any of my business. I can't do anything about it anyway.
Right.
Exactly.
You know, bless Donald Trump's heart. He can't help it. A bunch of us think he's goofy, you know. He can't help it. I hope we don't get kicked off the air for that.
Oh, man. We talk about
my church will probably implode now. So
well, I'm pretty sure I pissed off every black person in the South when I talked about Martin Luther King and his sexual escapades. I'm just like, you know, why are you going to focus on that when he did all these great things?
Right.
But I want to ask you, when you're talking to someone and you're trying to stay detached from the outcome, I get that piece, but most people aren't going to reach that much allowance in their life. I'm you know, how am I going to allow myself to do this? Scott and I say it all the time. Yes, I want to have a certain level of awareness, and I want to understand, and I want to grow. But let's face it, I want to have sex sometimes. I want to be. I'm not trying to be Dalai Lama. You know what I mean? Like, you know, it is what it is, and it was what it was. No, man. You know, so you know, the balance for me is I know that I'm going to have some sort of emotional attachment to how you respond and how you act, but how do I have the bravery to continue forward, you know, and not, you know, for instance, let's not do the podcast. I don't feel good about how our last episode, you know, there wasn't a lot of heat on it. You know, a lot of people didn't respond. Or these had had 65,000, but this one right here didn't have quite as many. You know, I'm not feeling it today. No, you have to be uncomfortable and feel all that self-consciousness. Like you said earlier, acknowledge it, accept it, and release it, and then create. Right. And how do you get to the point, the part where you can say, without hurting people's feelings, you're going to be uncomfortable most of the time, but you still have to go forward and make that decision anyway. You know, it feels like a lion, but it's not a lion. Keep going.
Right. Well, every song Michael Jackson released didn't go to #1. Right. He just kept doing his right. So
right.
And that's. I mean, I don't know. What do you say to that?
Yeah. Well, I will tell you what I said on Sunday morning. You know, we're in the middle of talking about the Christmas story. And in Unity, we do talk about Advent. And last Sunday was all about hope.
Right.
And I told the Mary story. And I said, yeah, she was only 13 or 14 years old. And she didn't have a clue, really, Think about when you're 13 or 14 years old. What's happening to her body? What's going to happen to her? How she's going to be. In that country, you were supposed to be stoned if you were pregnant and not married.
Wow.
So all of that had to have been going on inside that little girl's mind. I can't even imagine. I asked my congregation Sunday, do you remember being 13 and 14? Were you ever worried about any of this? Somebody's going to take you out and stone you in the road?
Right.
You know, but what we do know about her, if the scriptures are true, and I put a big if there, you know, because I don't look at the Bible as a history of anything. It's just, it's the evolution of consciousness.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But the thing that I take from her story is she just kept moving forward.
Right.
Even without knowing.
Right.
And we have to do that too if we want to evolve our consciousness. And some days are easy. And some days are damn hard.
Absolutely.
To put one foot in front of the other. So the other thing you've probably heard me say many times, I do one thing every day where I am with what I have in that.
Right. So Wade says something. He goes, are we responsible for other people's feelings? Shouldn't they be in control of their own feelings? I mean, my opinion, this is not, I'm not speaking for anybody else. It's like I say this, you know, there's a point like with certain family members we had issues with since we moved back from California. And finally we stated our truth and what we are.
Yes.
And what I said to one of them, that's a full-grown woman, I said, however that affects you is your problem that you need to deal with. Yes. You are a grown-up. I'm not responsible for the way you react to that. It may be uncomfortable, but you're noticing the discrepancy in yourself you need to deal with. You need to figure out what's making you uncomfortable.
I tell, and I even taught my boys this, and they laugh now when we have conversations, because, you know, kids will say, well, he made me mad. No one can make you feel anything. Nobody can make you feel anything. You know, I hope this is not going to be off color enough on this thing that you're going to go, Denise, why'd you go there? But when my boys
You've listened to our show, right?
When my boys were in middle school, my oldest son came home one day and he said my youngest son had called him a douchebag. And he was crying and crying. And I said, okay, everybody come to the table, because we had family conferences at the table. And I said, okay, I understand that you're upset that your younger brother, who probably doesn't even know what a douchebag is, called you one. I said, do you know what a douchebag is? He said, no. So I explained to him what that was. I didn't have one, but I explained it to him what it was. I said, Meemaw used to have one, his grandmother. I said, we don't do it like that anymore, but here's what it is. And he was like, Mom, that's nasty. And I said, are you one of these? No. So why did you allow your brother to get you all sphinctered up when it's not even true? Yeah. You know, I said, nobody can make you feel bad unless you accept what they're saying and take it on.
So we had a show about labels and accepting labels and what people try to put on you at one point in time. And for kids, particularly, what you're saying is very true. It's like a lot of times they don't understand, but as an adult, if somebody labels you a certain way and you have a reaction to it, part of that reaction is because you identify with that label. You've accepted it.
Yes.
So, I mean, that's right. So I hope that answers your question. Should we be no, you're not responsible for other people's feelings. You just have to be your truth and your what you are, and then they have to deal. If they have a discrepancy, then they have to deal with it.
You know, Scott, you're a douchebag.
I teach a lot of peace in our church, and we talk about that. And I tell people, sometimes if you know that what you're getting ready to say is going to be a little bit hard for somebody to hear, you can say it in love and kindness. Right. You know, but I can't sugarcoat what I need to say.
Right. Sometimes you can't. Yeah, sometimes you can't do love and kindness. Sometimes it has to be very blunt. And, you know, I do that quite a bit. Colin calls me an asshole quite a bit because I do that quite a bit.
Well, you're a douchebag today. So,
well, with my own sons, I know sometimes the only thing they understood was sit your ass in the chair right now.
Right.
You know, because I could have said, I love you and I need you to sit down, and they wouldn't have paid attention to me.
But I think that's the beauty we talked about in the past is the beauty of showing your range of emotions to your kids, but also allowing yourself to make the mistake and then admitting it to them.
Right.
See, look, I'm sorry. I overreacted. I did this, but this is a chance for me to, I'm still growing. I'm still trying to better myself. That this thing that occurred helped me recognize something in me I needed to address. I'm sorry you're the, the recipient of that, but hopefully you can see that even as a grown man, I admit to my mistakes and it's okay.
Right.
It's okay. That's how you grow, right?
It gives you a perfect example of what that looks like. When I was younger, I never once heard, any of the adults around me admit that they were wrong. There's transparency and, beating you down and all that, but there was never a moment. Well, no, I'll take that back. My big daddy, I'm sorry, baby. I know I didn't come in there and save you from your big mama whipping your ass. It was me to put the hoe out there, and she thought it was you, and you got your little ass whooped. But I just didn't want to hear her mouth, and I went on out to the farm. So I was like, "Dang, Big Daddy, what did you?" Yes. But let me get you some cake. Yeah. But I feel like for me, the growth is so slow. Because the example in the South is very reactive. And I feel like, again, I'm going to speak for me. I feel like we're more sensitive because we're addicted to tradition and things of that nature, and anything that comes in that kind of disrupts that belief about tradition and labels and all that, we take it personal and the narrative is changed and switched over, and we don't get to the bottom of what the origin of the dispute was. And I think that's why we're having such an issue with the kneeling right now. I mean, it got your attention and something was done. Now you'll see more people stand up, and there's still people, I'm still going to boycott. I don't know that you're going to want to have that stand 20 years from now when you understand that when you put the other person's shoes on. And I'm going to say this. We were making a joke. I'm going to go ahead and get y'all out of it. I was making a joke earlier about the starving kids in Africa. You know what I mean? I might not be as empathetic as I need to donate. But let me be a starving kid in Africa for a year, and I might spend the rest of my life trying to make a change. You know what I mean? I'm not saying you're right or wrong for not, but don't sit back and act like, you're talking about the secret and you need to visualize, you need to do all this. Well, tell that to that starving kid. Let me see here. Sandwich, image of sandwich. You're still not going to get a sandwich. There still has to be some help there. But you don't turn around and look at the person that chose to be homeless and act like he didn't have choices. Yeah. You could get a job or you could do whatever. And then there's other people that are homeless that they really need the help. But my overall point is, whatever you decide to do, don't discredit where a person is because you don't feel empathetic to them. You know what I mean? If you can't put yourself in their shoes, at least allow them to be in their space without acting like the narrative has to be changed. You know what I mean? Like, you've got to do something to get someone's attention. If I were in those people's shoes for a day, it probably changed my whole outlook.
Absolutely.
So if you haven't been Black, you haven't been a woman that was abused, you haven't been this and that and the other, you don't have to be empathetic toward it, but don't sit back and act like it's fucking okay because you haven't. You know what I mean? Oh, well, then the Black person needs to work harder and this and that and the other in America. You know that there's a disadvantage.
Well, it's like the whole with the mansplaining and all that kind of stuff. I can have an opinion on it, but by God, no way, shape, or form can I really speak from you. We could spend we could be attached all the time. Your experience is still going to be completely different than mine.
Exactly.
And I can never explain it, although I have witnessed it the entire time. I still can't explain it because it never directly affected me.
Right.
So,
well, and this year at our church, we've had the theme of being a force for good.
Right.
And what I tell people, because they'll say, I don't know what I need to be out there doing. How would I know?
How can I tell you?
How do I know what you need to be out there doing?
I can define that for you. Yeah.
But I said, the only way you know is when something touches your heart in such a deep way. That's probably it.
Right.
You know what I mean? if you know, it's not that every time starving children come on the television that I think I need to give, but when something really, really touches my heart,
do it,
or it upsets me, that's the moment I need to be mindful of.
Yeah,
say, I need to do something right now with this.
It's the thing that makes you say, man, I wish they would do something about it. Well, you're the they.
You're right.
Do
right. It starts with you.
Yes, because something else I heard this last Saturday at the One Nashville meeting that just really I have marinated on all week, because the man started with saying something that I have said many, many years. Give a man a fish and he will eat for a day. Teach a man to fish and he will eat for the rest of his life.
Right.
And I've always said that we need to be teaching people how to fish. But he said, what if the powers that be have built a fence around where you fish or have polluted where you need to fish? Then what? Yeah. So tell me what, Scott? How do you answer that? Because that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. Does that make sense?
And
never thought about it that way.
That's a better example than the chess thing that I was talking about last week. When you have an advantage, you're on the inside and you get to fish. The people on the outside of the fence, they can fish. They know how to fish, but they're on the outside of that fence, and it's electric fence. You can't get by it.
Or the pond they've got, you've polluted.
Exactly. So that's what I'm saying. Like, how dare you, as the people on the inside, be like, well, just fish. Just like we don't have access to the pond.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So I say that to say this. We're communicating. I'm not going to say where. You're communicating with the people that are on the inside of the fence, and they don't feel entitled. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So you can't see that, you know, the heritage that Indians are inheriting is all of that repetition of being looked down upon. Blacks, women, you know, Mexicans are the new black, and the newest black is people from the Middle East. You know what I mean? There was a period of time that Asians were looked at as ridiculous. Like, you remember the big old teeth in the front and this and that and the other? There are always these groups of people that are looked down upon in a certain period of time. Jews, and all these people are looked down upon. How do they get to the inside of that fence? Do you know what I mean? And it's eventually someone says, hey, come on inside the fence and we're going to give you all the extra pieces. And now most people are considered white except for Indians, Iranians, and blacks.
Well, Freddie Gilbert says fish in someone else's pond. It's not that simple. They're not giving you access to the pond.
Right. That's the analogy.
You know,
that's why I said that really, I have been marinating on that all week. It's like, I don't know what to do about that. You know, we have the sheriff of Nashville told us in the Saturday meeting that we have 20,000 homeless people in Nashville, Tennessee.
I believe it.
And that 8,000 of those are children.
Wow.
Well, that made my heart break.
Yeah.
It was like, okay, what do I need to do? I don't really know at this point in time. But I know that I need to do something, because even when I say it, I go, oh.
Yeah.
It's like something goes off on the inside of me. But what I know about those people is they don't know even where to fish.
Right.
Some of them are addicted to something.
Right.
Some of them are mentally ill.
Right. And
what needs to happen?
Right.
I don't know.
Well, in our area, I don't know how true this is, so I'll ask you. There's been a big influx in the last 3 years of the homeless in our area, because Mayor Giuliani, there's a no loitering in there, and they gave free tickets to all the areas that don't have that loitering law, and we were one of them. And we get about I think it's about 20 or 30 influx of homeless people a day.
Wow.
So you know, not just from New York, but all the areas that have that law, they give them a free ticket to the areas, and we're one of them. And working downtown during the summer, you would never see the same homeless people, you know, every week. It'd be like, this week you see this group, and then they would phase out, and they would look kind of clean when you first see them, and then it starts to deteriorate, and I don't know where they go, but it's like, it's scary how many homeless people we have that are different. every week, and it's an epidemic for sure.
Well, I think it's interesting that Nashville has become one of the it cities, right? So it's number 8 on the.
Put a SH in front of that and see what you get.
So it's So and with that, and that's funny,
City.
so it's now number 8 on the list of relocation destination cities in the entire United States. There's 80 to 100 people a day moving to Nashville. Right. So there's still a lot of deep rooted thought of the racism and separation, women are less and all that. And I think there's a lot of irony there, because you have a lot of the new thought coming from the West Coast and things like that kind of changing that. And it's forcing these people. They have no choice, because they're now the minority.
They
the
are.
Ones here. And then too, I think it's ironic that the largest Kurdish population in the United States is right here in Nashville, Tennessee.
In Nashville, Tennessee.
So,
isn't that interesting?
It's very interesting.
It's like,
and you talk about challenging all kinds of fronts there. Oh gosh, a whole totally different religious belief. Oh, what are they bowing to? What is
Right.
So,
well, that's another thing that I have attempted to get out there, and people still can't quite wrap their mind around it, that the God that you say you worship is the same God that they're talking about. They just call it something different.
Right.
It's kind of like, I give them the same analogy this time of year. Santa Claus, if you do any historical
we did a whole show on that, didn't we?
It's like Santa Claus looked different and was different in each country.
That's right.
Same difference. God is going to look different and be different in different countries and different belief systems.
Well, I want to thank Donald Trump. You ready?
Yeah. I know where you're going, but
yeah. I want to thank Donald Trump, because there's lots of things that are surprising to us that is now common knowledge. Who knew that almost every woman that exists has experienced some sort of sexual harassment? I mean, I never really thought about it like that. That's crazy to think about. But tell me one person from the Middle East being here in America that hasn't experienced some sort of racism. You know what I mean? The sexual misconduct, the racism, all these walls that we didn't even know were there have been exposed, and people are now telling their true feelings about it. And now we know that it's there. The reason why it seems like, I think a lot of people are stuck on how it feels and where we are right now. They're saying, well, we've digressed all the way back to the 50s. No, we were already there at the 50s mentality. We were just pretending and acting like it wasn't there. Now that it's exposed, no matter how crude, we can now address it.
Right.
We're being forced to address it. And you're going to bicker and argue with family, and then eventually you're going to get to the root of it. The emotions die down, and you're going to, you know what? Okay, let's talk about it. And you're going to slowly progress. It's going to be just like that ocean liner that's out in the ocean, and it's making that big wide turn in the ocean, like Rev D was saying earlier. It doesn't happen quick. You're not in a sea-doo. You know what I mean? It's going to take some time. And if we can just get to the point that we accept the fact that it's just going to take some time and stop taking it so personal, I think it's going to happen a lot faster, but it's going to happen regardless.
Yeah.
We just got to deal with this painful, abrupt introduction to all the crap in the beginning. Shit stinks for the first 7 days, and it turns into this little white powdery thing that you just have to throw away.
It brought things from the darkness again and took the veil off of things again to address things that needed to be addressed.
That's exactly what I was
Good job,
about,
Trump.
Because I was thinking about, it's really more of an Easter story, but when Jesus supposedly resurrected, when the light came back up on the planet, well,
I just couldn't help it.
It's a story, okay?
Yes, it is.
All of my Church of Christ friends can go offline now. How's that? But the veil in the temple was severed, which meant that the people that were the priests that knew the truth, but were not sharing it with the people, they only shared what they wanted them to hear. They kept the truth here.
Right.
That's what's happening in our planet right now.
Nice.
The light is coming to the surface. The darkness is going away, and we're beginning to really see. Think about when you turn lights on in a room, then you see the cobwebs and the mess that you need to deal with, right?
Right.
Well, that's what we're seeing
right
now, and the veil is being rent. And some people don't want to look at it. Like I said, the 50, 60, 70-year-olds, they're going, I didn't want to deal with this. Well, hello, you're going to have to deal with
this. And the light is
Mm-hmm.
much stronger because you think about that in a dark space, a pinpoint of light you can see.
Yes.
But in a light space, you can't see a pinpoint of darkness.
Right.
So,
Right. Yeah. So that's really what's happening is the truth is coming to the surface.
Right.
And so I have said exactly what you said at church. I'm glad Donald Trump is there.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Because this needed to happen.
It did.
We needed to realize that there were still white supremacists around and that
Right.
they really believed that shit. You know, it's
Right.
like, okay, who knew?
Right.
You know, and that there were men like Donald Trump who think that they can just grab a woman by the pussy if they want to. It's
If they have a little bit of
hello?
power, I'm your boss, so come here and let me get some. It's not right.
It's like, you know, we need to be real now.
Right.
Be real and go, this is what some people believe. Not everybody, but some people believe this. And it just makes us more determined, and we need to be ready to step up and go,
Right.
this is not okay.
Right.
This is not okay. And we need to be teaching our children, this is not okay. You know, Lord mercy, I'm so glad my boys are already grown. I can't imagine raising a child right now. Bless you.
Right. Right.
he's 15, and thankfully he has charted kind of his own mentality and the way he's going to do things. Not anything that I've done or my wife's done. He is just a unique kid that just goes against kind of the grain, but not in
Right.
such a way that's going to be difficult and things like that. He
Y'all
recognizes
gave him the canvas for him to do that, though.
Yes.
So
and he recognizes the less fortunate kind of situations will speak up, but he's just a very unique. He's a cool kid, man, and he is the kind of kid that will be the one that can change his classroom, that can change his school by being his silent leadership that he has, you know, and speaks up when he needs to and not in a forceful way. That's his way. Where I would come in blasting, what in the hell? You know,
Right.
so, and that's lyrics the same way.
Yeah.
Right. Well, it's one of my, and I can't even tell you where it is right now. I'll have to look it up on the web. But one of my favorite scriptures in the Bible is, if I be lifted up, draw all humankind up with me.
right.
And that's what he's doing. We don't even have to do it even with our speech. We just have to, you know, you can feel somebody walk into a room.
Yeah. Oh God.
Right.
They make things different
Yeah.
just by their very presence. That's what we've
That's
got
you.
to teach. Well, and
Yeah.
I attempt to do that every time I'm in any kind of a room. It's like, I'm going to exude my vibration in this room so that I can raise the vibration. Of
And
other
that's the
people.
thing. We're responsible for the vibrational energy that
Yes,
we
we
release.
are.
And so it's selfish of you to come into a situation and have all your negative vibration into my
Yeah,
space.
being the Eeyore that you are.
But then you're going to take all the positive vibration frequency and not put anything good back out. You know what I mean? So
Yes.
that's half joke, you know, halfway.
Yes. Lord mercy.
So I'm interested in I don't want to run too long because I don't want anybody to kind of, you know, fall out here from tiredness or anything like that. But I'm interested to kind of hear your path from Church of Christ and then that pivot out to where you are now and the leader of Unity Music City and Hermitage.
Well, I got pretty much kicked out of the Church of Christ. Because I decided I was going to be divorced, and they at that point in time would not accept you. Now, I was told that I could sit on the back pew.
Okay. Thank you.
That I could not speak out. I had been the director of all the youth program at the time. And I was told that I couldn't do any of that and that I could not take the Lord's Supper, the communion.
Wow.
But I could sit there.
Tastes like ass anyway.
And I was like, why would I want to come and do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, they were trying to make it your decision.
Yeah. So, you know, I didn't go anywhere for a while. But because that habit, and it was just a habit, had been instilled in me, you go to church on Sunday morning. I was like, this feels really weird to me. So I decided, well, you know, I live in fucking Nashville, Tennessee, and there's every kind of everything that could ever be here. So I just started just traveling around and going to different churches. And because I'm a singer, I sang for a while at Downtown Pres. I was a soprano soloist there. I sang for a while at Vine Street Christian Church, and I did that kind of stuff for a while. But then what I began to realize is even in some of those churches, I was having to stand up and say the Apostles' Creed. You ever heard that?
No, ma'am.
Where that you say something like, I know I'm a lowly sinner and
oh yeah,
died for my sins and all this bloody. And I was like, oh. And so I had this little thing that went on for several years where I would finally go up to the choir director and I'd say, I just can't stand up in the choir loft and say all that, because it was in the front. Everybody was staring at you, and they would say, well, if you can't stand up and do that, then you can't be a part of this. Kind of like the kneeling thing.
You kneel now.
Right. It's like, I would say, well, I could just sit down while y'all do. No, you have to stand up. And I said, well, if I stand up, can I not say it? No, you have to say it.
Wow.
While everybody's saying it. It was like, I'm out of here. So eventually I just, again, was going nowhere. And a friend of mine said, Denise, why don't you try Unity? Well, quite interestingly, the last Church of Christ that I had been at was actually Woodmont Hills, which is on Franklin Road, and they're not considered a dyed-in-the-wool Church of Christ. They're kind of a little bit more liberal. And at the time, I had started a divorce recovery program, and we were doing a counseling ministry there, so we were trying to help people. And so I did that for a little while, but then a woman in that church said, why don't you think about Unity? Well, I had gone to lunch at times and at what was then Ruby Tuesdays in Green Hills. It may still be Ruby Tuesdays. And there was this church that was meeting at Hillsborough High School. It was actually Unity of Nashville, which was then called First Church. I didn't know, but they would all come ripping out of there on Sunday while we were eating lunch. And I said, what is that? And they said, that was a Unity church. I didn't know anything about what Unity was at all. But what I will tell you is the first Sunday that they opened the church where they are now on Franklin Road, I went with my friend. I sat on the back row. And I heard for the very first time, you're probably going to think this is bizarre, God loves you. I'd never heard that before. I had not been taught that. Right. I was taught you're bad, you're a sinner, you're going to hell, God doesn't love you,
you're a wretch,
you're a bad little girl, you're nasty, you're blah, blah, blah. I'd never heard God loved you. There was a minister there by the name of Jimmy Scott. He was a black man. He was an amazing guy. And he did this meditation. And every Sunday he would say the words, and he had this low bass voice, God loves you. And I would just sit there and cry and cry and cry. And know that I did that for about a year and a half. Now, I would go a Sunday or two, and then I'd go, oh, dear God, what if hell is right and there's a devil and I'm going to be sucked down in a big black hole somewhere? So then I would not go one Sunday. I would think, I can't go back in there because I don't want to go to hell. That had been planted.
This can't be right.
This can't be right. God loves me. No, that can't be right. So know that it was a very slow process. It took me about a year and a half. There was a class that I took there where they had a bunch of people that were going to become members of Unity, and I was learning about what Unity was all about. And all the people that were in that class were from all different religions in Nashville. And we talked about what was the same in our religion as Unity and what was different. Unity has 5 basic principles that they teach. The first one is there is one presence and one power. And then you can call that God. You can call that universal energy. I call it living, loving spirit. It's whatever you want to call it. Doesn't make any difference.
I like it.
The second one is that everyone has that presence within them. Some people call that the Christ. Some people just call it, their juju or whatever, their karma, their whatever they got inside them. But that we all have that same energy within us. The third one is that the thoughts that you think are creating your world. That was huge for me to even begin to understand that what I believe creates my world. And if I don't like what I see in my world, I've got to think different thoughts. And so the fourth principle is the way you think different thoughts is to pray or to meditate. Prayer is not to something out there. Prayer is only to shift your consciousness. That's when I really started understanding prayer and started liking prayer instead of not liking prayer, because I thought prayer was to pray to some big man sitting up on a cloud bless my heart, I'm a mess and I know you don't love me, but please love me and help me get out of the mess that I'm in right now, because I don't know how else to get out of this mess. Praying and meditate aligns me with this presence and this power. But the fifth principle is really the one that kicks people in the butt. You have to act.
Right.
And still in unity. I have people in my congregation that have been in unity for 25, 30 years. They can blah, 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 blah all day long, but they don't do anything with those principles.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
If I'm not living and know that when I'm in the middle of this mess, there's only one presence and one power, and I don't have to be afraid of you because there's one presence and one power. And when I connect to that, I'm going to be okay. Does that make sense?
Right.
Absolutely. That's being an active participant.
I have to be an active participant in my life. And when I started getting that, I was like, I want more of this.
Absolutely.
Many people are on the sideline of their own life. They let other people call the plays of
Yes.
their life.
Ooh, Sky.
Yes. And I had to let go of my victimhood at that point in time. I couldn't be a sexually abused little girl as I was. I couldn't be a victim of, spousal abuse as I was. I couldn't be all the things that I thought I was.
Right.
I had to go, okay, I have this same presence and power inside me, and I can create the world I want to create. But then I had to do what I'm writing a book about. What do I want?
Right.
Nobody ever asked me that question growing up. What do you
Right.
want?
Right.
No, you have to do what we want you to do.
Right.
Does that make sense?
It does.
And unity gives people the option of creating what they want. But again, I talk to, on a general rule, about 20 to 25 people a week that are my clients. And most all of the time when I say, what do you want? They'll pause for a minute and they'll say, well, I don't want bloody, bloody, bloody. And I don't want my husband to bloody, bloody, bloody. And I'm like, whoa, what do you want? People don't know.
People don't know.
They don't have a clue. And that's why I will go back to what I said to you and anybody else that's listening. We have to teach our children how to answer that question.
And the thing is, the fallacy and the issue with that is if you're only focused on what you don't want, that's all you're focusing on.
That's all you're going to get is more of that.
Yeah.
I don't want to be a victim. Guess what? You're putting that vibration out there and you're going to be a victim again.
It's like, don't think of a red car. What are you thinking of right now?
Red car.
Damn red car. Damn red car.
That's so funny because I'm sitting here, I'm trying to be quiet because I'm like, man, I don't want this to run long, and I'm in that space and it's like, I got this thing I want to say, but I'm not going to say it because I don't want this to run long. And then I was just like, it's almost like you were speaking straight to me, like, will you just relax and quit worrying about an outcome and just create and just be organic.
Yep.
So I'm going to go ahead and just say this. You said this, the thing that kind of like stood out to you. One of the things that stood out to me when I really started to understand more, you never get to the point that you understand everything. Mm-hmm. You grow until you're dead. You're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. So the thing that stood out to me is when I discovered that your epinephrine, not your epinephrine, but your oxytocin and all your endorphins fire heavily, whether you're arguing and you're upset or you're excited.
Right.
The endorphins that you get from sex is the same that you get from a fight.
Yep.
That's what attracts you to keep going. That's why you want to win so much, and whether you win or lose, you still get the endorphins. That's why you have the attraction to someone that you hate. That's called a codependent relationship. And when I discovered that, I was like, oh, crap. No wonder politics is so difficult. You think you are so smart. You're just addicted to the perpetual wheel of addiction. You know what I'm saying? Like you're it's just an emotional thing. And to convey that, if you admit that that's a real thing, you're going to be forced to grow. But if you're addicted to those emotions and those endorphins, you're going to be like, well, fuck that shit. I'm just going to keep arguing. You know what I mean? You're not taking my damn drug. So That's the dilemma.
A rageaholic.
You know what I mean?
My mother was one of those.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, you know, it's addictive. It feels good to do it. So that's the dilemma, reaching those people that aren't ready to put that drug down, not ready to put that cigarette down, you know, metaphorically speaking. You know, and I think until we consider raging a disease, just like you would, I think it's ridiculous to call someone an alcoholic because they used to get drunk a whole lot. You know, they label them something negative. Yes, you did this thing and you need to be careful or you'll fall in that addiction, but don't label me an alcoholic.
Have you ever thought about, and I've had many people that I've counseled with that, you know, really got upset with me. But when you go to an AA group, and I've known people that have gone for 30 years.
Right.
Think about what they affirm every time.
Yes, and I'm an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Like affirmation is exactly what you are. If you continue to say that,
that's it's not going to get you past the alcoholism. You're just going to keep saying the same thing. I'm an alcoholic. It's like when somebody says I'm sick and tired. I'm like, oh, be careful.
Yeah. Right.
You want to be sick and tired.
Right. You're affirming what you're going to create. We had on exposing real estate and damn near anything else, there was an affirmation that would be stated all the time. And it was what part was it? It was, and here's Scott Mosley, a real estate maverick. And Scott has always been a stellar, an amazing real estate agent. And you would do 10, the average, a little over average, 10, 15, deals a year, and most real estate agents that are active will tell you that's about their average. This man had that affirmation day after day after. Every time we listen to the show or every time we create a real estate maverick, Scott Mosley. And last week he did a $8.5 million deal.
Woohoo!
Well, that's one of the deals. He does about 20 deals a month. He's killing it. And it's one of those things where you affirm what you're going to be doing, or what you state it as if it's already the case. Yes. You know what I mean? And it wasn't that it was a lie. What you believe is what you make true. It's not what you think. It's not, someday. No, as if it's already the case. And then, you have that affirmation and you have that perfect example of how it works. You'll see people that will say, I'm in a slump right now. And they'll make all these affirmations and mantras. A mantra is anything that you state over and over and over again. These mantras of not being good enough. And then they'll be the first ones to ask, why is my life not exactly what the outcome that I really wanted? And I feel like it's an amazing gift that these people have access to you and don't even really realize how much of a blessing you are that you're right there. But just like those people that are addicted to arguing because of those endorphins and they don't want to give up their drug, is the same reason. Yes, you see a lot of people, but it's the same reason a lot of people won't go into your office.
One of the things I say to people sometimes, and some people can take that in and some people can't, is when I hear an affirmation that I know somebody does not want to create.
Right.
I'll just say, affirm that 1,000 times and see where that gets you.
Right. Ooh. Yeah.
And then I just don't say anything else.
Absolutely.
Because there's nothing else really to say.
Right. It puts the mirror up. I need to learn how to do that.
So I do about 5 deals a month. And I, from the beginning, I always said, I'm number one. I'm number one. I'm number one. Well, I'm number one because I've.
Oh, it was 20 deals since you've started.
Yeah.
Okay, my bad.
So most since I made my transition over to the current brokerage that I'm with, most agents will do about 10 deals a year. I do about 5 a month.
Okay.
So in 2 months, I'll do what most people do in a year's time. And it was from the old show. The affirmation is like, I'm number one. I'm number one. I outproduce, and I do. So, and that's not an ego bragging thing, but that's what I wanted to have for myself.
Right.
Right. But then also to have balance too. So,
I think people don't really get the importance of our thoughts and our words. And I'm going to give an example that I think will help people understand. Years and years and years ago, I had this idea that I was a spiritual midwife. but people were like, that's weird. What does that really mean? So I just put it aside. Well, then about 1.5 years ago, when I started my high vibration zone business, I thought, hell, I'm putting it out there. I don't care what people think. And just recently, I got a contract with Tennessee Infertility.
Whoa.
And I'm working on Tuesday nights with women who are going through processes to try to get pregnant. And I'm running a women's group.
That is awesome.
And I stated years ago that I was a spiritual midwife.
That's amazing.
Words are powerful.
Yes.
We just don't really get it. Does that make sense?
Right.
And I just sit and giggle and go, well, it makes perfect sense that I'm doing this. Who would have thunk that I would be a part of this process? Does that make sense?
Right.
Absolutely does. Well, it's like the agreements, right? Be impeccable with your words. You have to be careful with that. And sometimes you have to create, define something and make it and expose that to people over, so they then learn what it is you're trying to do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like you think of like when Apple first came up with the smartphone that really changed the game. People are like, I don't really know what to do with this. Now it's kind of the standard, right? They had to educate people on what it is. Well, that's what you had to do. You created something that's not in existence.
Right.
And you've had to educate people over time. Right?
Well, yeah, and
I probably didn't say that right.
Well, not to reframe what you were saying.
It's going to be better.
But for me, what I was thinking when you say it, I don't know what it is, so I've got to ask, and it's just another opportunity for you to tell them exactly what it is. Otherwise, they can assume they know, but to hear it from you, boom, and then it's an affirmation every time you say it, and then have to reconfirm. And then next thing you know, you've created this thing. And I think that's so amazing. That is so neat.
It challenges what you thought you already knew.
Yes.
So spiritual midwife. Oh, so you help bring kids into the world. Well, not exactly. What do you mean?
I help people birth their dreams into the world.
Well, that's a kid if you
think about I'm your partner in believing in this. Yeah. And I'll hold this dream in my hand until you're ready to birth it.
I love it.
Oh my gosh, that's amazing. So you said you're working on 3 books, right? Which one is closest to completion?
I would imagine the one that is called How Do You Get to Happy From Here? I've been working on that one for probably about 1.5 years. And the other book that I'm working on is with the other therapist, and we're not even getting clear about what we want the title to be, but I have a feeling it's going to go in the direction of all the stuff about women.
I like it.
Because we feel like it's time for us to speak out and to give women the chance to not only speak out, but to say, I probably was a part of the creation of all this and the energy of it.
That's the piece that's not being touched upon at all.
Not at all.
No one's holding themselves accountable for that.
No. And the other one is, you all may be aware that at our church every year we run about an 8 or 9 week thing called Peace Circles.
Yes.
And we ask people to come and just be willing to sit in circle with each other and listen to what each other has to say.
I like it.
And it's going to start out as a child's book, and then it's going to move out from there. But it's how do we come together as people that are all different.
Right.
And sit and listen to each other, because we have to do that first.
Absolutely.
Even if we're afraid. That's the only way the world's going to change.
Right.
And I believe it can.
Absolutely. It's uncomfortable, but we've said this before. Most of the things that people want, the common things that people want is, shelter, love, and your family to be safe. We've got all that in common. We can work. We can do a lot from that basis. So when you get the book done, you have to come back and talk about it. We have to talk about it. I'd like to get copies so we can read and we can talk about it.
That would be awesome.
Which would be phenomenal. As you know, and we're about 2 hours in. That we could go all day with it. It always happens because. So we have to have you back so we can, because there's so many other things I want to dive into about your things that you've shared about your childhood and the leader of the church, and it's an unconventional kind of church and unconventional type of leader of a church and who you're married to now. All that kind of, there's so many great things that we can hit upon that will be very beneficial to many people in our audience but
Right.
people in this area,
Yeah.
you know, that are
Right.
looking for that exact thing. University of Nashville.
Right.
So we got to hit that. We got to have you back so you can talk
If
about
I'd have
this
had
thing.
something like that when I was a kid to
Jesus,
go to,
yeah, are you kidding me?
I
Yeah,
mean, it would
for
have
sure.
it would have changed a lot.
Absolutely.
You know, earlier.
So do you have any, want to add anything to, and we'll give Rev D kind of the last word?
Yeah, of course.
Yep.
For me, I'm just glad Rev D decided to come in and you know, minister to us. You to me, you're a leader of leaders. Scott, he was talking to me earlier, and he was talking about a lot of the new agents that come in. They like to work with him because he's got that teacher / collaboration type of mentality. And you know, if I'm gonna go be trained by another trainer, it'd have to be someone like Scott, because you know I can train myself pretty decent, but if I need that extra push, it needs to be somebody who's dynamic and awesome, kind of like Terrence Pennington.
Mm-hmm.
Pennington, but I don't know why I can't say your last name, homie. Pennington. But you are that type of person. There's so many leaders that need to listen to you and learn how to be compassionate and learn how to not work on people's fear. Like, fear sells. If you want to make a group of people listen to you often, you can sit there and you can hell and brimstone and they'll come right back to get that beat down again. And you know, it goes along with what you're addicted to, and you're addicted to the good and the bad. And I think that's a disservice to the person that's coming to you for help. Well, so thank you for being that kind of person.
And I bet you find, obviously you get great joy helping, you know, just people in general that come to you that are, you know, counseling with you and whatnot. But I bet I can want to speak for you. Maybe you can say this. The biggest joy that you get is when you have other thought leaders, other ministers that come to you for guidance, right?
It is, because it makes me really understand that I'm doing something right.
Exactly.
You know, I have people in groups all the time go, how do you stay so peaceful in the middle of all this? And I'm like, you really want to know? I do my work every day.
Yeah, absolutely. You know? Absolutely. So any parting words?
Well, I would say that, you know, I talked a lot about what do you want? And I find that is such an important thing, because everywhere I go in the world, whether it's Unity, whether it's the one Nashville, whether it's just the Chamber of Commerce or anything, I meet people after people after people who are not necessarily happy in their lives,
right?
But they really have no idea what they want. They've never really been taught that they can even think. They went into jobs just because it was going to make a lot of money, and now they've been there for 20 years and they're like, I don't even have a clue. And so it is a great joy of mine to just invite those people into conversation and just to listen to them. Because if you give people an opportunity to talk, they're eventually going to start talking about what's important to them, what they value, what they're passionate about. And if I can be a conduit to listen and take that information in, and then share it back with them, what I heard, sometimes people don't even know what they said.
Right.
And it's like, oh, a light bulb goes on. And then it is not a far stone's throw for me to be able to say, let me hold this for you until you're really ready to start walking forward and creating this, because this is what you want to be.
It's what you say.
This is what you're saying you want to be. And so what I say that I do in my business is I work with the gap between what people say that they want and where they are. And people give up because they think, I can't do this. But you can if it's your dream.
That's awesome. That's the midwife piece. That's the
It
birth of what you really want.
It is. And that's what I do for anybody.
We go back and listen to the show, and not for the ego piece. I'd learned so much about myself by listening to the show again.
Yes.
And then I hear his perspective again. And so that's great. We've got a recorded diary
Yes.
You know, that we can go back on, you know. So it's all those things like you're talking about. You're speaking it back. I'm hearing it back. I'm like, God, I said that. I think that way.
And what did I really mean by that?
Yeah.
And yes.
I challenge myself many times. He challenges me. And listen to this again I'm going to get so much more when I go back and listen to it again.
I can't wait to go back and listen to it.
Yeah. So
I understand more.
Thank
so
you
than
all
ever.
very much for having me. It has been a joy today.
Absolutely. It's been great. We got to have you back. So, Facebook, you know, this video will populate in YouTube. We'll upload this a bit later. You'll see it, and then the podcast will drop later today as well. We have another guest next week as well, Tuesday coming in. So tune in to that. Probably get started around the same time, but we must have you back. So any case, thanks everybody for tuning in. Until next week, I'm Scott.
It's Colin.
And I'm Rev D.
Out. So the podcast portion is done. Facebook is still live. Facebook, thank you again. YouTube, thank you again. Please comment, share, like, whatever you do to kind of get the word out on what we're doing. If you like what we're doing, good, bad, or indifferent, just comment. We appreciate you guys. Love you.
Out.